like and subscribe. Now, what fan theory do you 100% accept as true? Not sure if this counts, but Donkey from Shrek being one of the kids from Pinocchio who turned into a donkey is pretty mind-blowing. Kevin Malone, if not actually a genius, is certainly much smarter than he lets on. Clearly he's lazy and gluttonous and blah blah blah. But after the merger with Stanford and it's revealed that Martin had served time, Kevin realizes that he needs to give plausible deniability to any sort of financial maleficence that the accountants have been doing, and flanderizes himself in front of the camera. Occasionally he slips up and reveals himself to be something a math genius, and has to backtrack and play it off as some kind of food-based idiot savant. It's how he was able to afford ownership of the bar at the end of the series. I'm sure he made a bit just cashing in all those free drinks, but actually enough to buy a bar? I don't believe it. The reason each It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode starts with a date and time is because they're all testifying against each other in court. Oh it's definitely against Dennis. The Empire Strikes Back. Admiral Ozzel is a rebel spy. Everything Ozzel does in his brief bits of screen time is to the detriment of the Empire. When the probe droid finds the rebel shield generator, Ozzel tries to dismiss it as smugglers before Pete speaks out of turn and gets Vader involved. Later, Ozzel orders the fleet out of hyperspace too quickly, giving the rebels plenty of time to activate the aforementioned shield generator that Ozzel knew about. Clumsy as he is, stupid or rebel sympathizer who gave his life to give the Alliance as much time to evacuate their base as possible, I side on the latter. Beavis and Butthead have fetal alcohol syndrome. That Loki was controlled by the Tesseract more than he let on. His eyes glowed multiple times and he shed a tear when Thor tried to talk sense into him. Wait, there's a theory the Tesseract controlled Loki like the Mind Stone could? That is the general theory of the Avengers. Loki is not evil. He is not a villain. He is the god of mischief. He just likes effing things up. He is not the type of person to invade a planet and maliciously murder everyone. Thanos was under control of him. Miguel and Tulio may not be gods, but the armadillo that follows them around absolutely is. It's just helping them out because they saved it from being eaten. Bebo, I agree. When the volcano is going off he is chasing a butterfly, and then when Tulio yells stop, Bebo stops chasing the butterfly as well. It even keeps cutting to Bebo during their conversation. Another one is his ability to walk on walls and change direction mid-air during the game, and him accidentally helping come up with a plan for the boat at the end, amongst other things. In Disney's Ratatouille, the old lady in the beginning of the movie living in the house next to the river is the food critic, Antonego's mother. In the flashback scene where he eats the ratatouille you can see similarities of the house from the beginning. Her face and I think the bridge. That explains Remy being able to make the ratatouille that tasted exactly like his mother used to make. Oh sh-t-t-t-t-t-t. Imagine Antonego taking his mother to his new favorite restaurant and introducing her to the chef. The town from Footloose is the same town from Tremors. The ban on dancing wasn't a puritanical attempt to control the youth. The town elders were aware of the graboid threat, and banned dancing out of the fear that it would cause rhythmic vibrations waking up the creatures sleeping below the town. Kevin Bacon's character in Footloose stayed in the town, growing up to be his character in Tremors, at which point he has to try and contain the danger he inadvertently released. There was so many problems with this, but, man, that's hilarious. As a massive Tremors fan, this made me laugh. Thanks for sharing. The Jetsons and the Flintstones are living at the same time in a dystopian future where the haves live above the clouds and the have-nots are stuck on a wasted earth. The signs include that Flintstones celebrate things like Christmas and other holidays, which doesn't make sense, and the Great Gazoo alien appears in both series. Gazoo is in the Jetsons. James Bond's primary purpose is to be a distraction to keep attention off the spies who actually spy. Villains and other spies know him. He rarely takes an alias. He makes his presence known early on and keeps messing up operations for the villains. But other spies have already infiltrated their ranks and work while Bond does as much visible damage as possible to keep the others safe. I like this one. When you think about it, he's a pretty bad spy. I read it on a fan theory post once, and it replaced my headcanon. It's simple and logical. Little late to the game, but the theory is that the Kyber crystal in Luke's green lightsaber is the same one from Qui-Gon Jinn's. After Kenobi defeats Darth Maul with his master's lightsaber, he would have kept it as a keepsake. Despite rebuilding his own saber, it's likely he would have retrieved it and kept it with him after the Order 66 attack. After the Empire takes over, they destroy all artifacts and memory of the Jedi in their purge of changing the history, and most Kyber crystals go towards powering the Death Star. Because of this, any lightsaber crystal would have been very difficult for Luke to find after he loses the Skywalker saber, but we know he returns to Tatooine to complete his new lightsaber, likely returning to Ben Kenobi's home for components, where he would have found Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber and recycled its crystal. I vaguely remember reading, it might have been Shadows of the Empire. Come to think of it, that Luke did go back to Ben's hut to study and get supplies. This makes a lot of sense. The monsters in Courage the Cowardly Dog are regular people but seem monstrous from Courage's perspective, since he's cowardly. Also they live in the middle of nowhere because his owners never take him out, so that's how he views the world. Red Alert 1's Allied victory results in the Red Alert 2/3 universe. Red Alert 1's Soviet victory leads to the Tiberium universe, debunked by the writers themselves. But that's how it'll always be for me. Every Star Wars planet is like a quarter the size of Earth. How else does each planet have just one biome? Glinda dropped Dorothy's house on the Wicked Witch of the East, not the tornado, and uses her to gain control of Oz. One of the first things Glinda tells Dorothy is that she killed the witch. They praise her so she'll accept it, and when the Witch of the West comes along, who killed her sister? Dorothy. Glinda then puts the ruby slippers on Dorothy's feet but does not tell her that she can use them to go home. Instead, she sends Dorothy to Oz in possession of objects that a witch would murder her for. Dorothy, being forced into a situation where her only salvation is Oz and her worst enemy is the Queen, inadvertently exposes the Wizard of Oz as a fraud and murders the Witch of the West. Now, who's left to rule Oz? Glinda effin' Witch of the North. She used Dorothy as an expendable pawn to gain control of Oz without having to leave her bubble. And when Dorothy is done upheaving the two biggest powers in Oz, Glinda sends her home and makes her think it was all a dream. She came down in a bubble. Doug. They were sisters. Hell. The Wicked Witch isn't even that evil. She just wants her sister's shoes to remember her by. No one mourns the wicked. The real world in the Matrix movies is just another layer of the Matrix, designed specifically to appeal to people unwilling to conform to the normal matrix. Humans in this outer matrix have confirmation of their belief that something was wrong, and get to indulge in the fantasy of being a heroic freedom fighter against the faceless evil machines, thus choosing to accept this false reality. The anomaly of the One is that he's capable of rejecting both realities, which is the reason why he had powers in the real world. Yeah, did Revolutions ever address this? I thought the cliffhanger ending of Reloaded was meant to reveal that the real world was just another Matrix. The official explanation for how Neo has powers in the real world is that he got them from going to the source, which is that room with the architect near the end of Reloaded. These powers are not supernatural. Neo, like all people born into the Matrix, has computer augments implanted in his body. With these augments, he hacks into the machines, causing them to explode. It was supposed to. The big reveal should have been that the Matrix exists to keep human minds enslaved because the machines were actually using them like a big supercomputer cluster. It was never about electric energy storage. Studio execs killed the idea because they thought fans were too dumb to understand it. Pokédex entries are written by young trainers, when a professor sends a bunch of 10-year-olds out into the world to document Pokémon. Of course the research can't be expected to be professional in the least. This is how we end up with the creepy legends of ghost Pokémon that might have been passed around as playground rumors, or impossible facts like Makago being hotter than the actual sun. There's no reason why out of all the Pokémon professors, one of them couldn't have revised their dex information and correct the tidbit about Pidgeot breaking the speed of light or Gardevoir creating black holes or Blaziken's jumping over 30-story buildings. It's likely they leave the kids to their own devices without bothering to fact check, and kids, being kids, are going to exaggerate. In the old games, completing the Pokédex gives you a diploma, so basically Pokédex entries is the character's graduation thesis paper for the trainer diploma. Professor Oak just sent kids out on random errands so he could bang their moms. I 100% believe the two men accompanying the woman in the original Blair Witch Project planned and successfully executed a plan to murder her while they were deep in the woods. Too many factors point to good old-fashioned murder than a supernatural occurrence. I have one of my own. Buffy's mother Joyce's brain aneurysm occurred indirectly because of Dawn. Not through magic or anything directly supernatural, but she was Dawn's mother and therefore she would have the most artificially created memories. Conception, pregnancy, life, thoughts, fears, etc. This caused so much real physical change to her brain overnight that it created real medical problems and killed her. This is never hinted at all in the show. I always kinda thought this too. It makes perfect sense. The first headache Joyce gets is in Dawn's first full episode. Robb Stark died twice. First in his own body, and second in Grey Winds. He had a chance to see eerier moments before his death. Jean. Robb grabbed the edge of the table and forced himself to stand. Mother, he said. Grey Wind. John fell to his knees. He found the dagger's hilt and wrenched it free. In the cold night air the wound was smoking. Ghost, he whispered. Before their hearts could beat again he had passed on, searching for his own. For One Eye, Sly, and Stalker. For his pack, his wolves would save him. He told himself. That was his last thought as a man. Both Robb's and John's last words were their wolves' names. Veramis Skin's last thought was living again in his wolves. And then we read it happening with him living again in One Eye. That the book Rory writes in the Gilmore Girls revival is the original show that explains why the characters are so different from the show vs revival miniseries. She's looking back at the past with rose-colored glasses. It would also help explain any unrealistic aspects. For example, eating 1,000 pounds of fat and sugar every week, splurging on ridiculous things at the same time you're talking about having budget problems, claiming to have watched every movie and read every book 100 times while being incredibly busy with life. This is Rory exaggerating for her book or misremembering when anecdotes took place. Same with How I Met Your Mother. If the show is someone talking about their memories, you get a convenient way to explain inconsistencies and other nonsense. Event Horizon is a prequel to the Warhammer 40k universe. I was looking for this. What did we learn from this movie? Do not travel the warp Immaterium without a Gala field, unless you're an orc and are looking for some mid-flight entertainment. King of the Hill. Dale knew about Nancy and John Ridcon, but feigned ignorance, both to keep his home life stable, and because he knew Joseph would be raised as his son rather than Ridcon's. She cheated? Hank, I knew about Nancy and John Ridcon. I knew about them the day Joseph was born, but every day since he was born I've been taking my revenge. That boy, he loves me Hank. He loves me. Love that John Ridcorn will never get. He'll never hear his own boy tell him that. Joseph will go to his grave loving me and never so much as looking in John Ridcorn's direction. His children, his grandchildren, they'll love me too, Hank, and they'll never even know John Ridcorn existed. That's revenge. Hank, just like when the former Soviet Union resurrected Lenin to cause the housing crisis in America in revenge. Anon number 90,319,350. 4chan. 2017. I read this in his voice. Amazing. Willy Wonka knew what he was doing. There was no seat for Augustus aboard that boat. He knew Augustus Gloop would fall in there. Oh yeah, this is absolutely true. It's why each kid had their own downfall specifically programmed into the tour. That's why he seemed bored by the end too. He was just weeding out the kids that weren't worthy. It's been a while since I watched it, but did they ever get to one to test Charlie? The fizzy lifting drinks thing was Uncle Joe being a bad influence, wasn't it? I don't think that was meant to be Charlie's downfall. Otherwise, how was there still room for him in the tour past that and whatnot? This also brings up the end game of the movie into question though. Was there a challenge meant for Charlie we didn't see, or was it actually just giving back the gobstopper? Slugworth was going to pay handsomely for it, so I assume if poor Charlie gave it back to Wonka that was him passing his test. The fizzy lifting drink just pissed off Wonka, I guess. That was never supposed to happen, I don't think. The fizzy lifting drinks thing was Uncle Joe being a bad influence, wasn't it? I don't think that was meant to be Charlie's downfall. Otherwise, how was there room for him past that and whatnot? Charlie and Grandpa Joe don't even drink the fizzy lifting drinks in the book. It was added in the film. Wonka probably knew that Charlie was the right person. Ed from Ed, Ed and Eddie is mentally stunted. which is why he's one of the dumber characters in the show despite appearing older than the other two Eds. He's about as tall as Kevin and Rolf, who are some of the oldest kids in the cul-de-sac. Also that his parents are abusive to him because of his mental handicap, literally removing the stairs when he was grounded, and his sister's attitude towards him is learned behavior from their parents. This is further reinforced by him living in the basement, having non-existent hygiene habits, and retreating into obsession with TV and sci-fi comics. In fact, the other two Eds come from troubled homes as well, which is why they're social outcasts in the cul-de-sac. It's been heavily implied that Eddie's parents knew his older brother was physically abusive to him and let it happen. Meanwhile, Double D's parents spend zero time with him, and won't even directly communicate with their son, choosing instead to leave him notes for chores instead. I like the theory more that Ed's parents wanted a girl and when they've got a boy decided to roll with it for a while. In an old baby photo of Ed, we see him naked with a girly bow tied above his head. But that didn't work and decided to try again with success this time. This is why they've never cared about Ed. They've never wanted a son. In the school report episode we hear Ed describe what would happen if his parents found out. The school would tell Sarah, Sarah would tell mom, mom would tell dad, and dad would just stay on the couch and watch TV. It seems Ed really loves his parents, and the love is not returned. In the grounded episode, Ed is willing to accept his punishment, no matter how cruel it seems, because he loves his parents. He cares for Sarah because he loves her and doesn't want to disappoint his parent. In the episode in which Ed has a rock in his shoe, we see what would happen is Ed wouldn't care at all. Sarah threatens Ed, and all Ed does is yell back. The only authority Sarah has over Ed is the one he decides to give her. We can see that more in the episode when Sarah is sick and Ed is genuinely worried about her. Emma, Bean is an alien. That would explain his weird behavior and why he falls out of the sky at the beginning of every episode. Not an angel instead, he falls from the sky to the sound of a choir. I always thought this meant that he died, but he was so stupid that they kicked him out of heaven back on earth. Greg Heffley is a sociopath. He is a sociopath. It's just not mentioned. The author said that Greg Heffley was all of his negative traits amplified, so this is true regardless of if it was intentional or not. The Mad Max films do not take place in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's just that's what happens when a bunch of Australians get lost in the desert. This is more of a personal fan theory than a common one, but the Titan in Titan AE was designed to be powered by consuming dredge like it does at the end of the movie. That's why they attacked Earth. Thank you for starting this thread. I forgot how fun fan theories are. This was a Reddit post a while ago actually, but the theory was in Empire Strikes Back, when Luke tells R2 to stay in the ship at various times. He doesn't stay put, because the last person to tell him that was Anakin and he never came back. My favorite R2 theory is that in A New Hope when he and Obi-Wan meet again, that unlike C-3PO, R2's memory was never erased but they pretend not to know each other. This is obviously because the finer details of the prequel trilogy weren't ironed out when A New Hope was originally released. Now the widely accepted fan theory is that Obi-Wan says nothing because he doesn't want Luke to know who he is and what his relationship was to Anakin so as to keep him from being corrupted by the influence of the dark side. Whereas R2 doesn't give anything away because he ain't no effing snitch. Like I've said a million times, R2 is a real one. Sean Connery, John Patrick Mason, in The Rock was actually 007 who was captured while conducting espionage in the USA, after the events of the last Bond film with Connery, Diamonds Are Forever, then imprisoned at Alcatraz. Mad Max and Waterworld take place at the same time on different parts of the same post-apocalyptic planet. They are just unaware of each other's existences. Peach is totally into being kidnapped. No one who isn't doesn't have that little security. Even more than that, she's having an affair with Bowser but doesn't know how to leave Mario. Bowser isn't kidnapping her, she leaves with him. That's why every time she gets saved she's like, oh yay, you saved me again. When the Red John suspect list came down to 7 names and Lorelei recited the names, only McAllister had a prefix, Sheriff, and not any other name. This shows he had a narcissistic personality which was a well-known trait of Red John. Never expect a mentalist fan. There's tens of us. My own theory that in The Office when Andy proposes to Angela the people playing his parents are different actors because they are literally actors. As in he hired them to pose as his perfect parents because his own parents couldn't be bothered to come. The people in the season 9 episode Garden Party are his real parents, who clearly are dicks. This would actually make more sense. There's a talking head where he mentions his father had an affair by saying if it weren't for secretaries, I wouldn't have a stepmom. I always assumed it was a continuity error or that his biological mom and his stepdad were at the engagement and his stepmom and biological dad were at the garden party. But the way he interacts with them and his brother at the garden party and over the phone point to them being his real parents, making it a continuity problem. Your theory actually clears most of that up. Dennis Reynolds is a serial killer. I don't believe this. But moments like the bird's necks in the Making a Murderer episode are so funny. What about the second crow? Okay, fine. I just couldn't believe how weak a crow's neck was. So yeah, there was a second crow, and a third. If you must know, Dennis Reynolds is a bastard man. Why Charlie hate? Peter Pan kills any lost boy that grows into adulthood. Captain Hook and his pirates are all lost boys that have escaped and aim to stop him. Isn't that canon in the books? That Dora the Explorer is visually impaired. She needs the viewer's help to see something that's literally 3 feet away from her, and she doesn't look at things directly. Zion is a part of the Matrix. This is one of those theories I choose not to read, because the thought of that being true, for the characters, is effing horrifying. Well, the reality of their situation is even worse. Zion only exists because the machines allow it to exist. Zion has been exterminated many times before. The humans have no hope of rebellion. They are trapped in a cave eating slop. Bill Cipher is still alive inside Stan Pine's mind after the ending of Gravity Falls. The clues leading to this conclusion, from fans, were so complex. They actually involved traveling to real locations and solving puzzles. God, I effing loved that show. I cried at the finale. I was so sad it was over. Sid isn't a bad kid by any means, just has a very troubled home life. 1. The she does to those toys is undeniably creative. It's also his escape. 2. There's a small clip where his dad is seen sleeping on a chair. IDK if you're noticed by I saw a few beer cans next to the chair, but it could just be me. 3. Watch the scene at Sid's house again and tell me why the sister has all this nice shit in each room whereas Sid's room is a complete dump. Granted, that's just teenage dude instinct to leave a room like that, but there's also the fact that all the toys he FS with are his sisters. There's obviously some jealousy and resentment towards his sister cause of his parents sucking as people and choosing favorites. All in all, I feel bad for the guy. He just wants to do what kids do and not have to deal with his harsh reality. Even grows up to work as a garbage man. Which granted I hear pays decently, but correct me if I'm wrong please. But I'm glad he looks happy and somewhat content in Toy Story 3 though. Dude's just vibing but still has a lot of personal issues probably. Spinach is just a front. Popeye is on steroids. Kermit cause 9/11. Not really much of a fan theory though since it's unintentionally canon. Realize this should be explained LMAO. Lol, please elaborate. Sebastian from Stardew Valley is a natural redhead. And the one that is almost 100% known to be true but is not yet confirmed. Abigail's biological father is not Pierre but the wizard. It's heavily hinted at. Her mom mentions having had a relationship with the wizard. They both have purple hair, and she has an obsession with magic. And his parents are in the middle of a divorce when the first Toy Story is taking place. I remember asking my parents why is it just Andy and his mum, and they said well some people live like that. Pixar. Rendering is hard. Let's just make one parent. We save on voice acting as well. Fans, the father is missing because he's dead. The Paw Patrol pups are part of a post-early initiative attempting to train enhanced, but subservient, companion animals to replace the robots that almost destroyed humanity. Everyone in Adventure Bay, Foggy Bottom etc. are paid actors who place the pups in coordinated training exercises, which is why Mayor Humdinger gets away with all his bullshit. Parenthood has melted my brain. As someone who watched way too many episodes of Paw Patrol, I believe it. I mean, how else can they make the graphic designs of plans in such a short notice? Pepe Sylvia is just Charlie trying to pronounce Pennsylvania. Kevin from The Office is secretly involved in a money laundering scheme. I can't imagine a guy as smart as him saying so dumb otherwise.